Captivating best-selling creator Vita and her ambassador spouse are being met. Vita has ended up popular. She's exceptionally well-known in tall society. She's like a wonderful hot wild rose. Each move she makes is taken note. Within the meet, she and her spouse wrangled about the status of ladies in marriage. It was an incredible wrangle about the climate was exceptionally strongly. But at that point they strolled out of the meet room. They gave each other a grin that, as it were, they caught on. They knew they were almost to set off a firestorm of talk, not at all like the sharp air of the meet. Their marriage was open and free. Since they have a same-sex fixation, they had their possessed private lives, so they depend on each other and do not meddle with each other. Vita returns to her mother's house. To begin with, she tells her mother she's attending to a party this evening. The party was facilitated by the Virginias. Virginia was exceptionally popular at the time. She was exceptionally striking, courageous and dynamic. Vita was complimented to be welcomed. Her mother knew what Vita implied as before long as she heard it since of her daughter's cherish of when ladies. Her girl proceeded to live an liberal life after her marriage. She indeed dressed as a man and ran absent with a cheerful man. She indeed composed a book around her encounters. Her mother felt that she was a disfavor. Vita was a celebrity. Her spouse was an ambassador. But this celebrity status did not tie her to her uninhibited identity in a range. Not to lose the assurance of her family, she unobtrusively controlled her behavior, but her nature is difficult to alter. Within the evening, Vita still gone to the dinner. Finally, Vita met Virginia that night. She fell in adoor with him. At to begin with, Loke, Virginia extended his body to the music. She was like a white swan. She was white and lean. She gave individuals a sense of separate. Vita might not take her eyes off Virginia. When Virginia strolled out of the boisterous ball, she couldn't offer assistance, but take after him. Virginia was standing within the corner of the room, smoking discreetly. Virginia was not one or the other shocked, nor did he say anything when he saw her. Vita was exceptionally great at socializing. She said she had studied all of Virginia's works. Virginia inquired her in return, "What do you think makes your work distant better, a much better, a higher, a stronger, an improved, a stronger vendor than mine?" Vita answered, "Virtuoso and deals have nothing to do with each other." At this reply, Virginia giggled, and the time that truly made Vita fall in cherish with Virginia totally was a private party after the ball. Two visitors moved personally. Virginia gave them exhortation. Her words and touches gave the two artists the encourage to desire. She moreover brought Vita's craven adore for her to its top. Not long after the supper, Virginia got a letter from Vita. Vita welcomed Virginia to connect her scholarly circle, but Virginia's spouse Leonard was exceptionally unsupportive. He thought that Vita's circle was exceptionally fair in spite of the fact that she was curious about Vita, but Virginia taken after her husband's exhortation. In contrast to Vita, Virginia had a really difficult upbringing. Her guardians remarried. She was sexually manhandled at an early age by her half-brother, this driven to a neurotic connection to her sister and a dismissal of physical contact with the inverse sex. She was in a sexless marriage with her spouse. Her spouse cherished her. He increases in value her and endures her. He calmed her delicate nerves. Virginia's books weren't offering well at the time, so her spouse started a distributing house. He as it were distributed her work. Vita's letters kept on come to her. She sent Virginia a test of her prospective novel. As soon because it was published, she welcomed Virginia to require a getaway with her. But Virginia's answers were continuously brief, so Vita gone to her specifically at her domestic. As you'll envision, Virginia's spouse did not welcome her. He said his wife was composing. She couldn't exasperate Virginia. But the following minute the hireling who brought the nourishment thumped on Virginia's entryway. After assembly, him Wittig once more welcomed Virginia to come with her to Italy for a getaway. She thought that the excellent normal environment would unquestionably rouse her to type and be that as it may. Virginia still denied her. Vita didn't provide up when she went on excursion to Rome. She sent a long letter to Virginia. She portrayed the voce persistent as an allude. She shared her sentiments without reservation. Over time, Virginia's heart opened up to her. After that, Vita was able to come and go openly in her house. She could talk about writing and human nature with Virginia in individual. Vita never hesitated to commend Virginia's ability. Virginia pointed out that her composing was as well, in fact, as well much strategy need of genuine sentiments. Vita was not bothered by this. She cherished each opportunity to be alone with Virginia, but at whatever point they need to the insinuate subject of their relationship, Virginia continuously found a reason to leave. Vita was sometimes irate, but what she didn't understand was why this lady was so difficult to induce near to. Finally, after Virginia wrapped up her novel Mrs. Dalloway, she concurs to Vita's welcome for a vacation. She puts on a bizarre cap and arrives at Vita's family domain. Vita also welcomes numerous of her refined companions. At this point, Virginia's already loose temperament fixes up once more. The extravagant way of fantastic dinner, refined conduct, such a life was as well distant evacuated from her possess, and the other visitors did not like Virginia's scholarly conversation. Vita was touchy to Virginia's temperament. After the supper, she took Virginia to the loft. She trusted her inconveniences. She adored the estate, but since she was a lady, she was precluded from acquiring it. A bit like cheerful man she had cherished for a long time, but may not have when she returned to her room. Vita might not offer assistance. Kissing Virginia, Virginia maintained a strategic distance from it. She might Not yet, except such an intimate touch. Vita was reaching to stationed abroad for a while with her diplomat husband. She goes to Virginia's house to say goodbye. Before she left, she could not resist kissing Virginia. This time Virginia did not refuse. The days when they could not see each other they could only correspond, and Virginia not her longing. In her letter she wrote, "I feel as if I'm being swallowed up by a pool of murky water only because you're here." She even began to assume words Vita had written to her. By this time Virginia's mental state was also deteriorating. Whenever she was inspired to write she could always see the fantasy, for example vines of the primeval forest and crows flying in the sky surrounded her. Virginia's poor mental state forced her to require a break from writing. She told Vita of her distress at having to stop writing, so Vita picked her up from her home as soon as she returned at night. They spoke intimately before fire. At last they were both infected by the passion and the atmosphere. Their bodies finally came into contact with each other, and for the primary Virginia, who had been abstinent for a long time, felt the ultimate pleasure. They became lovers outside of marriage. Vita's special feelings for Virginia made her husband feel a sense of crisis. Although they had their own private lives, but he didn't want his wife to become the center of a scandal. Vita didn't care. She had Virginia's body, she also wanted Virginia's heart completely, and the problem was that Virginia's husband was irreplaceable. In Virginia's mind, she cares about that, so when she asked Virginia to leave her husband, Wilfa immediately refuses. Anger and possessiveness burned in Vita's heart. She would not allow her lover to love someone else. After an argument they parted unhappily. Even though Wulfric soon wrote to ask for her understanding, Vita's desire for revenge was overwhelming. She knew too well how to hurt Virginia. She began to vanish, was anxious. She looked everywhere for Vita's whereabouts. Finally Virginia saw Vita at a party holding hands with her old lover. They were acting close. As a result Virginia was devastated. She was back to being a chrysalis wrapped in pain. That day she rushed to the river and tried to kill herself. She looked down at the bottomless raging river, but her inspiration to write swept over her. And finally Virginia's husband found her in the dark room where she was writing. Virginia said excitedly she had a brilliant idea. She was attending to a legendary character based on Vita, 100 years of history to be told through her mouth. During the creation process Virginia imagined that Vita was narrating word by word in her ear, so she reached out to Vita again. She initiated contact with Vita, but when she tried to explain Virginia cut her off. She hates tangled feelings, she only wanted to tell her pure feelings. Vita sees that Virginia is back to her previous coldness. Vita was a little disturbed, but she soon stopped caring about it. She was a flirt by nature. There were many people who could excite her. The wine was beautiful, one taste is enough, so she didn't stay long. Vita said goodbye to Virginia on the grounds that a diplomat can't live without his wife. Virginia despised her scheme, but she had no other choice. Finally the Orlando based on Vita was finished. Virginia sent her sample book to Vita at the first opportunity. Vita opened the title page and was captivated by the story. She read the story with no time to spare. She couldn't wait to induce to England. From Berlin she knocked on Virginia's door. Virginia was surprised because her love for Vita had never diminished, so when Vita asked to elope again she did not hesitate to say yes. After the passion Virginia got up alone, but on his desk he saw a letter from Vita to his old lover. Vita wants to share her work of love Orlando with her old lover. Virginia seems to fall into the abyss. She walks out of the castle. It was not until the morning light appeared that Wade found Virginia within the outside the manor. By now, however, Virginia had finally broken free from her pain. She returned to the castle with Vita in peace. She said to Vita, "You always ask people to be unreserved, but you yourself are always hiding in a fog. Rather like words, they shine, but are very faint. When I longed for you, I have reached out my hands to you, and you didn't grab my hands." These words brought tears to Vita's eyes. She knew it was Virginia's farewell. Virginia was an awfully person, she said. Such things, there was no possibility of repairing their relationship. Wolf came forward. She looks at Vito, who is as helpless as a small beast. She sees through Orlando to the inner world of Wada. She saw her obsession with appearances. She saw the freedom of her nature. She also sees her true self in all its transparency. She is like a shining star that lights up the starry sky. But she does not belong to any one person. Their end is already predetermined. As she explained to Orlando, Orlando was born to love the vast isolated place. Virginia and Vita's love ended, but their friendship lasted until Virginia's death by suicide in 1941.